Welcome to Paul Shamplina's Talking Property channel.
What is the big news in the world of landlording? Renters' Rights Bill, now Renters' Rights Act. Who better to ask in my programme than Sean Hooker?
Hello, Paul. How are you?
Who are you, Sean?
Who am I?
Tell my audience.
I'm Sean Hooker. I'm Head of Redress at the Property Redress Scheme. I basically deal with complaints against letting agents and estate agents and property managers.
So we here at Hamilton Fraser Towers, we own well-known brands such as My Deposits, the Property Redress Scheme, Client Money Protect, Landlords Own, Landlord Action, Total Landlord Insurance, HF Assist, all helping the lettings world of renting. We personally have been living and breathing the renters reform, renters' rights for 5-6 years, haven't we?
5 or 6 years, yeah, since it was first mooted to get rid of...
when it was a white paper.
Yeah, it was a white paper and everyone said it was going to... everyone was in agreement and it was going to rush through and be on the statute books in record time.
Well, it's taken 413 days since September last year to now for the Labour government to bring it in. It became law yesterday.
Correct.
Explain what that means.
Right, okay, so it's gone through both houses of Parliament and the King has put his big X on the law, and the law is now enacted.
So the law is now enacted. Let's just break down very quickly. So we're going to be the abolishment of Section 21, which is the 2-month notice of non-fault. We're going to have periodic tenancies, 1-month periodic tenancies of getting rid of fixed terms. We're going to have stronger grounds for Section 8. Tell us some of the other stuff that's coming in.
Well, it's of course the Section 13, which was in existence for putting your rent up, is now going to be compulsory, mandatory. You can only do it once a year, and if it goes to appeal, the rent can be agreed, it can be lowered, but it can't be raised.
Okay, and tell us some of the other stuff coming in.
And we're also looking at a database, and at a database of properties, but the landlord and vested interests will have to register on it. It's going to try and record the condition of that property on that database. There's also something called the Decent Home Standard, which currently applies to social housing, but will be moved into the private rented sector at some stage. And to oversee this all, there's going to be a new ombudsman where landlords will have to join, and this new ombudsman will deal with complaints like I deal with complaints of agents. They will be dealing with complaints of your tenants.
So the tenant's got somewhere to complain about their landlord.
Correct. Yeah.
So that most probably will be disrepair, repairs, would you think?
Yeah, well, it'd be the whole life cycle of the tenancy. So from that beginning section where you are applying for a property, a tenant, so some of the things they're bringing in is anti-discrimination rules, so you can't discriminate against somebody for being on the on social security or
being an Arsenal fan.
Well, not quite that. Yeah. Well, maybe in opposite Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, of course. I had to throw that in.
You wouldn't want to.
But also, there's pets. Do you want to explain about the pets scenario?
Yeah, the pet thing was, it's very interesting. So way back when all this reform has been mooted, a former Conservative MP put in place what was called a private members bill. That's a kind of what an ordinary MP can put forward. It's not got much hope of getting through if the government doesn't support it. They called it Jasmine Law. What they wanted is pet-friendly properties, pets in lets, so that a landlord could not unreasonably refuse you to
bring a pet in, yeah.
To bring a pet in. Now, one of the things that developed from that, because the government said, look, we're not going to support that, but there was a campaign to persuade the government that if there was a provision for landlord insurance for pet damage, that would mitigate the losses or the potential losses of a landlord, making it far easier for them to accept the idea of having a pet in the property.
I think right, and I think one big thing for landlords, which is really important, is getting rid of the anti-bidding for of tenants bidding. Explain that. Yeah,
well, that hit the news about a year and a bit ago when it was discovered that anything up to 40 or 50% tenants would be queuing outside to view a property, mainly in the southeast and London area, where demand is huge and supply is very short. And literally, the agents and landlords were basically saying, "Well, who's going to offer
like
me
an
the
auction,
highest?"
yeah.
Like an auction, and playing off each tenant against the other one. Now, the tenants were desperate to find the decent properties, so they were willing to participate in this, but the government saw that this was kind of an exploitation, potential exploitation. Now, I see it as part of the market, and sometimes that actually happens. Sometimes you've got to cool down a market, but that might change in a few years.
But that would just mean the landlords will just put the rent up as a higher rent, because obviously you can bid up to that, but you can't bid above.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's a big thing that's coming in, especially for vulnerable tenants, overseas students over here, is you can only charge 1 month rent in advance. Is that right, Sean?
That's correct as well. Yeah.
So if I put on a tenancy agreement 6 months rent in advance in the new world, and we're going to be talking about the new world shortly, then I'm in breach, aren't I?
Yeah, you'll be in breach, yes.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So, and just talk to me about the enforcement, the local authority enforcement, because there's always bringing all these rules and regulation in. Obviously, there's 2.7 million landlords, 11 million tenants. The majority of landlords are decent people and care about their tenants. How's the enforcement going to work?
Well, that's going to be a very good question. And actually what we have seen is the ramping up of the enforcement over the last few years. And one of the things that the government did was they relaxed the rules on local licensing. I know that's very unpopular with many landlords, but it relaxed the rules for HMO licensing. And what they've done in the new Act, or what they're going to do in the new Act, is they're going to put the fines up considerably. Okay. Now, they've always said that the local authority can keep that money for themselves.
So landlords are going to be an easy target?
Well, there could be, but reality is that the local authorities will have a lot more draconian powers. So you really should be taking this very, very seriously.
Yeah.
And make sure that you get the expert advice before you start to kind of assume what's in this legislation, because the consequences on you, and ignorance is no excuse. And you can't say I didn't know.
Yeah.
The fines are penal.
I know they would. And let me come on to Awaab's law. As of today, in the social housing sector, it's become a law. It's going to become a law in the private rental sector. Explain what happened and what does it mean?
So a little 2-year-old boy.
In Rochdale, wasn't it?
Yeah, in Rochdale. He was living in housing association, social housing. I think, Rochdale Council put him in there. They had damp and mould within the property. He had an underlying problems, but a part of his eventual death was brought about because of the conditions he was living in. And essentially now, in the social sector, you cannot now ignore or assume that mould in a property is a causal effect.
So what's the time frames? How will that work?
I believe that you have to respond within 24 hours.
Yep.
And come up with an action plan to mitigate any of the damp and mould, either treat it or try and address the underlying factors.
I think there's a lot of education to be done, not just for landlords, but for tenants, living conditions. No child in this century should be dying from mould. I've always said that I think social housing conditions, most probably in this day and age, are worse than the private rental sector. That's a different type of argument to have. So let's just talk about time frames, right? We've been waiting for this for bloody ages, haven't we? Let's be honest about it. It became a law yesterday. I personally think it's going to come in April. We're now filming this towards the latter part of October. This will be live in November. What's your for you? I mean, you're working with the government. You're meeting the government all the time. When do you think it's going to come in? And how will that implementation look?
Right, how is it going to look? That's the big question, and we are waiting with bated breath for the release of the timetable. Now, some of the things we've talked about will need secondary legislation or ministerial approval. Things like the Ombudsman and the database, they are...
That's further down the line.
Further down the line.
Yeah.
But let's have a look.
The here and now.
The here and now is what the clarion call by the tenant groups is Section 21 must go. So we need now for the government to give a firm date when you will not legally be able to serve a Section 21.
And the new periodic tenancies will kick in.
And the new periodic tenancies kick in. There will be a transition between if you've issued an AST, an assured short hold tenancy, and it kicking into being a periodic. And at the end of the day, you are going to have to come to the new world of if you have a tenancy, it doesn't matter what clauses are in it, say X, Y, or Z, they will become defunct on that transition date, after the transition date. So your tenancies will automatically become the periodics.
So look, so dumb insolence is not a defence, okay? What is going to happen is rent repayment orders. I think they're going to be the biggest risk, obviously, to a lot of landlords, and we're going to touch on that in a different video shortly about what's going to happen on rent repayment orders, where a tenant can claim for up to 2 years' rent within 2 years of leaving a property. Just closing this interview now down, Sean, what advice do you give to landlords now with the new regulation coming in?
Well, 3 things. Number 1, get your facts straight. So what you need to do is you need to find the reliable sources of information. We all love the internet, we all love AI, but there's a lot of stuff out there. Very interestingly, read the press release that the government put out themselves about this act, saying how great they've been. Actually includes the provision in there that said that a landlord can charge for insurance on pet insurance. The reality is that they don't even know what's in their own act in the press office. That was the bit that was removed. It's actually in their own press release. So you've got to make sure you get the most reliable source of information. Number 2, okay, you've got to act, and you've got to act within the timescales that are there, because literally, come the end of December, 27th of December, all the big powers that that have been granted to local authorities will kick in, and these are quite strong enforcement powers, including powers to enter a property that they believe is unsafe to the tenant or unsafe in general, to enter that property that even the police don't have. So local authorities can start racking up the offences immediately. Third, okay, we're all human. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel qualified to do this.
Or have the time.
Get the experts in.
A letting agent.
A letting agent that's qualified and knows what they're talking about. And actually, what I would do is I would look at the guides that are coming out there. There's good guides by ourselves, Total Landlord Insurance, of putting out a guide. Lots of people like David Smith, who was a former NRLA
Go on loads of webinars.
Suzanne Smith, another one.
Yeah.
All of these people, Property Tribes and Landlord Zone. Get a list of questions, question your letting agent, and if they don't pass the test, don't engage them, however cheap they're offering a deal. Because what you don't want is to abdicate your responsibility for your property to an agent who then gets you into a load of mire.
And we know there's some poor agents out there, don't we?
And we do. I see them
you deal
on a
with
regular
them on a daily
basis.
where we get complaints.
There was a lot of good ones out there, which they don't come across my desk.
But it's
do your homework.
Do your homework. So look, that's the renters' rights update for you now. It's now a law. We're waiting for the impending date to come in. Get yourself educated. Click on the comments below. We'll respond to them all, and subscribe to Paul Shamplina Talking Property.
Subscribe now to Talking Property.